Well, welcome back to a very wet and miserable West Wales. I'm feeling a bit miserable myself, to be honest with you. We're going to have to talk about that one, are we? Apparently we are. Anyway, there's plenty to come. We'll talk about the 13 men Italy had to go down to out in Dublin. And that England try, should it have stood? Interesting. 100% Bath. 100%. The Georgian referee has a big decision to make, and a correct decision. He sends the player off. And if you don't believe me, have a look at Maro's smile. Right then, it's time for your Emirates Fans Questions. First up, Corbs has sent me a video all the way from Los Angeles.
Hey Nige, Corbs here. Just wanted your thoughts on the break foot rule in the Six Nations. Do you think it's actually stopping axle loading, and do you think it's going to be rolled out across the game?
Very interesting actually, that one. Now, I don't think the break foot will actually stop the loading, but what the break foot is supposed to do is to help the referee get the stability to prevent the loading. So even though that the break foot is now part of the setup, the referee still has to make sure that the two front rows don't lean into each other and give that loading before the setup. So yeah, I think it is something that certainly can help with stability, and it may come in across the board. Are you a bath or shower guy? 100% bath, 100%. Shower if I'm in a rush, but before a game, I always had a bath, every time. If you were running with a ball and you knocked it on, but kicked it before it hit the ground, would it count as a kick or knock on? Good question, Daniel. Will it count as a knock on? Because they deem you have lost control of the ball. And the law says if you lose control of the ball, you must regather possession of it before it hits the ground or anything else. So it's a knock on. Who would your greatest World 15 of all time be, and can you explain your reason for each player you select? Matthew, that's going to take some time to do that. We may get to that another day, but I'll tell you my favourite player. I refereed him and I love watching him play now, and that is Antoine Dupont from France. I have loads of other favourite players as well, brilliant, but at the moment he is absolutely brilliant and a joy to watch. Nigel, who is your favourite captain to referee? My favourite captain was Thierry de Sautoir, because he was a proper gentleman on and off the field, before, during and after the game, a real gentleman of the game. Right then, time for Whistle Watch. And I said last week, didn't I, there'd be plenty to talk about this week, and here we go. We'll get in the Dombrand try in a minute, but first of all, let's start out in Dublin, where Italy going down to 13 men had a lot of you scratching your heads. A lot of the players did as well on the field. How did it all come about? Well, first of all, the Italy hooker gets injured, so he's gone off the field. Now, when you go off the field as an injury, you are then replaced, which means under no circumstances at all as an injured player can you come back onto the field of play. If he'd have gone off as a substitution, he'd have been able to come back on for HIA, for blood, or as a front row replacement. So he's injured, he can take no further part in the game. Then we have the red card to the hooker who's come on in his place. Now, the important thing here is we are still seeing players tackling high. Look at the height of the tackler here. He goes in high, gets it wrong, not intentionally, but you have contact with the neck head area. Under the protocol and the guidelines, particularly around player safety and HIA, we need to get rid of this type of action out of the game. So as players and coaches, change of player behaviour has to happen. You have to get those tackles lower, or you are running the risk of this happening. So the Georgian referee, who did well in his first game in the Six Nations, has a big decision to make, and a correct decision. He sends the player off. Now, what happens then? Everything is fine now until you have a scrum, because when you have a scrum, you now need a hooker. There's no hooker on the field. What happens? You usually then take a back row player off and get a front row player on. But in this situation, we don't have an hooker to come back on, which means now you go to uncontested scrums. Now, the rule is this. On the uncontested scrums, if you go to uncontested scrums in situations like this, if you have a front row player on the bench who can come on or can come back on, he must do so. So they get him back on. He is not able to play in the hooker position, which means you have uncontested scrums. And because of that, Italy then have to drop a player and land up with 13 men. And the reason for that is because what was happening on occasions in the past was, if a team were getting nullified in the scrum, they would sometimes go to uncontested scrums where they didn't have to try and take away the advantage that the opposition side had them. So this is why this law was brought in. What some of you will be asking is, well, this is a bit harsh. Italy have had a player genuinely injured because he leaves the field early on. They've also had a red card and now they're punished again. So maybe it is worth looking at the directive and protocol that in situations like this, whereas clearly the side are not trying to take advantage of the uncontested scrums, where it clearly is unavoidable, maybe it is worth looking at, is there a protocol or directive that can come in so we prevent it going down to 13 men on occasions like this. Something to have a think about. Right, let's go to the big talking point, which a lot of you have been split on social media about it. Well, if you were English, you were agreeing with the decision. If you were Welsh, you were not. Now then, very difficult for a referee to see everything in the game. So in this instance here, what you have a closing of the gap in the line out by the two teams. Nothing illegal in that at the moment because the both of them are coming together to go and compete for a ball, which is going to be thrown down the middle. So you're always going to have a coming together of the both teams. But what you can't do is then illegally push or barge an opponent out of that space to prevent him winning the ball or to try and win the ball yourself. Maro Itoje uses his elbow to push the Welsh player out of the contest, so that is an offence. The ball goes over the top, is caught by Brandt, and then he crosses the try line, gets the ball down, and a try is awarded. So what should be happening here now is the TMO should be sweeping everything up. He's always looking in the background. And let me give you a bit of information that you may not know. When you're watching the game at home, you see something. What the TMO has, he will have usually a 7 or 8 second delay where he will see that action again in 7 seconds. So what usually happens is, if he sees something, ooh, what happened there? He will look in 7 seconds time, see it again, and then decide nothing in it, or, oh, we need to have a look at this. So when the TMO is sweeping up, he should be then giving information to the referee, or if the referee thinks something has happened, he can ask the TMO, can you check to be sure there was no obstruction in the line-out? Now, this didn't happen. And it's quite surprising it didn't happen really, because you have the Welsh players going to the referee telling him, look, our player was pushed out, can you please check this? This should then be triggering you to think, let's have a look just to make sure. It didn't happen and the try stood. So, on this occasion, I would say that Maro Itoje got away with it and England were very lucky to have that try. And if you don't believe me, have a look at Maro's smile. Right then, let's get up to Murrayfield and a very interesting call via the TMO for Ali Price. Did he get the ball down? Was he high tackle? Should it have been a penalty try? As John Barkley was asking in commentary. Right, this is a very, very interesting one and a very, very difficult one for referees to work through. So, let's take the high tackle first of all. It's not the worst of high tackles. The player is high, he catches Ali Price on the hand, it then goes up and he goes around the back of the neck and above the shoulders. So if this was to happen anywhere in the field of play, I'd be saying, okay, it is a high tackle, but it's a penalty only. It is certainly nothing more. So in this instance, the actual high tackle itself is not a yellow card. Now, does the action of this high tackle, because you deem it to be a high tackle, does it prevent Ali Price from scoring a try? If it does, and a try would have probably been scored in that instance, then it becomes a penalty try, and we all know by now, if it's a penalty try, then the player who's committed the offence has to be yellow carded. That is within the laws of the game. So, but what we have here, we have another defender. So I don't think you can say that Ali Price would have probably scored. It's very, very close because he does get very close to getting that ball down. So on this instance, I would say that it is just a penalty for a very unlucky high tackle, if I can put it that way, and for me, not a penalty try and not the yellow card, but a very, very interesting one. Oh, well, we covered a lot there, didn't we? I think I need to lie down now. Anyway, I'm having a week off next week, so can you as well. But we'll be back the week after when we get to the business end of the Six Nations. See you then.